Welcome back to another edition of the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast. Delighted to be joined as ever by Mr. Drew Dinsick at the top right of your screen if you're watching us now live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Rob Pizzolla returns in the bottom right of the screen, and Suma, man in red hot form, returns as well in the bottom left of the screen. Gentlemen, we're already into week 6 of the NFL season. Drew, we'll start with you first, mate. You're generally pretty good on closing line value. With the Colts was a bit of a bummer for you, man.
Yeah, regression comes for everyone. That's the lesson I can take away from that. No, I think if I was doing a little bit of a self-assessment, something very obvious happened to me in week 5. I completely whiffed on injuries at almost every play I made. I made a lot of speculative, that guy saw that injury. It didn't look that bad. He'll probably be available to go. There were other ones where I was like, yeah, he's going to be missing, but what's that going to matter? And it turned out that the market correctly priced almost all of that and moved away from me. And I don't know if there was a little bit of gamesmanship, I feel like, with some of the coaches and the coach speak and some of the moves they made, trying to, throw in a little bit of, I guess just looking at last night, for instance, like the fact that AJ Brown went and, the fact that, some of the players who were available in that game, that was a little bit of a surprise, to be honest. And, Taylor Lewan, AJ Brown, those guys looked completely fine, and they were went into the final week of their questionable. So, realistically, Titans without 2 weeks of practice putting up that performance was pretty wild. So, there's some stuff going on with coaches and how they're handling the injury report. And I'm going to be a little bit more diligent this week in terms of my handicap in that regard.
That was such a tricky one. There were so many people I know yesterday just thinking Bills minus 3.5 was the no-brainer play. But look, it's a weird season we're in. Rob Pizzola, you were on with us for week 4. We discussed there, Rob, the fact that there was no offensive holding penalties being called. I even saw one for clipping last week, believe it or not. It's crazy. I haven't seen that one in about 3 years. But Thursday night was a bit of a shock for all of us with the Bucs and the Bears, and we're starting to get back to last season again, Rob.
We are in terms of the offensive holding. So this past week 5, we saw offensive holding called at pretty much the same rate that it was called throughout the entire season last year. The challenge is it didn't really affect scoring all that much. So now you got to go back to the table and the drawing board and say, what other factors could be possibly contributing to scoring right now? Lack of crowd noise could be one. The pace of play is up this year as well. I think offensive coordinators just in general are smarter. So I think there's a lot of things that are contributing to it. I'll be interested to see if that continues going forwards, whether we do get back into, quote unquote, the old NFL with the way the games are called, or whether they're a little bit more lenient. But it is something to take note of. And I think we're going to have to do this almost on a weekly basis this year. Where are we trending in terms of the way that the game's going to be called? Because obviously that's going to impact your handicap of the game.
Almost a daily basis now, because there's games on Tuesdays, there's games going to be on Fridays, Saturdays, who knows. Suma, you absolutely nailed it with the Browns last week. I don't mean to get stuck into about the Colts, Drew, but this guy, you knew yourself, Drew, when Suma was best bet on the Browns, you knew then you were in trouble. Suma, good man, and you hit on insights.matchbook.com the total in San Francisco. Miami actually nearly got that themselves.
Oh, yeah, Fitzmagic. To be honest, if you told me before that the Niners are only going to score like 17 points or something, I would have been extremely cautious with that total. But, it was straight out Fitzmagic.
Fitzmagic all the way. Absolutely balling. 40 points against the 49ers. Banged up defense nonetheless. Right, coming up in today's show, we have the best of the week's action. Chiefs against the Bills, the Rams against the 49ers, Packers and Bucs, Browns versus Steelers, any other bets, top dogs, and best bets as normal. Right, gentlemen, let's get stuck in right at the start. I know we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. The Bills just played last night, so vast majority of sportsbooks and at Matchbook right now, this game is off the board. But we do have a general opening line. The Chiefs are laying 3.5 on the road to Buffalo, and the total is 58. Drew Dinsick, that total is huge. But there's 58. But come on, we're not going to be playing the under here. I bullied you into back picking the under on Kansas City and Las Vegas last week. We're not going to do that again, though, no?
Yeah, no. I mean, when you have a game against the Kansas City Chiefs, if they are trailing the over is golden. Like they can't make a live total high enough when the Chiefs are behind. Like realistically, they're going to score points. And the fact that the Raiders got out to a healthy lead in that one, and the fact that they scored, and put scoreboard pressure on the Chiefs in the fourth quarter pretty much sealed the deal there. But overall, two teams that are strikingly similar. Bills are basically, Chiefs light. Two defenses that are pretty suspect all of a sudden. Come into this season, thought the Bills defense was going to be their strength, and they have looked poor so far this season. They have, I guess holding Miami to 28 maybe looks a little bit better now in hindsight, but reasonably, they have not played especially well defensively this year. They have a lot of injuries across their, key players at each level of the defense. And thankfully for the Bills, they're at 4-1 on the play of Josh Allen through the first 4 weeks, which was excellent. And then regression came for him like a lightning bolt last night. Obviously kind of a fluky first pick. I wouldn't really put that on him. It wasn't a perfect pass, but it surely shouldn't have been that big of a swing in momentum really at that early in the game. But the second pick was absolutely brutal. And realistically, he just wasn't making great reads. And now can you say that just the absence of John Brown was the entirety of why he didn't look as good, that the offense in total didn't really click as well? The replacement level players, Roberts and McKenzie, whatever his name is, were these guys running the right routes? Were they in the right places? Because there were still flashes of the Josh Allen we've seen through 4 weeks. Really gutsy passes. The 2 touchdown passes he had were both pretty impressive. And the Titans played up. So to some degree you can hang it a little bit on the opponent, but it's difficult to see how he goes toe-to-toe here with the Chiefs, realistically. And the Chiefs, I don't really change my opinion of the Chiefs at all based on what we saw in the Raiders. They are the team we think they are. They got caught in a brutal spot. They played 2 very high-intensity, motivationally important games against the Ravens and the Patriots. They got a game where they're double-digit favorites in division against the Raiders, who they've been picking on as the younger brother for years. And, they're looking ahead to, a big matchup with the Bills where they're not even sure what day it's going to be on, which is a huge distraction in and of itself. So the fact that they had a little bit of a low performance, overall as a team against the Raiders shouldn't be super surprising. And they match up well against this Bills defense, especially if Trey White is still limited or out in this game. I just don't see how the Bills keep the Chiefs off the scoreboard here. The Bills don't have the right recipe for limiting Mahomes. They don't have the type of offense that's going to be able to play ball control and really, play keep away and limit the amount of possessions Mahomes is going to have in this game. So all told, I think, laying the points with the Chiefs on the road isn't the craziest idea in this spot. This probably gets bet up into the 5-6 range as we get closer to tip off. And I would expect it to be a fun, high scoring game, but the Bills, I think, are going to be a tough ask to back as an underdog in this spot.
Rob Pizzolla, you're nodding your head in agreement. You're happy to lay the number here, 3.5?
I'm not happy to lay the number. I mean, honestly, I was cheering for the Bills last night, just hoping that we would get a better number with the Chiefs this week. Like,
yeah.
-3, even a potential over 2.5 to me would have been like a pretty sizable play. And I agree with a lot of what Drew has said here. I mean, the thing for me, I was getting a lot of messages in that game last week, Chiefs Raiders, like the Chiefs aren't going anywhere with this defense. Well, I mean, they allowed 20 points or less in their first 4 games of the season, and people seem to forget that because the Raiders lit them up. They're the 13th best defensive EPA per play. They're top 10 DVOA this year on defense as well, and they faced Deshaun Watson, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, even David Carr, who's having a resurgence this year as well. So it's not like they faced nobody either. I personally think this Chiefs defense is way better than people give them credit for. I'm very concerned about the Bills offense based on what I saw last night, especially because I don't think the Titans have a very good defense, for one. But for two, they didn't get a lot of pressure in last night's game. I mean, Josh Allen was not under pressure. He seemingly had a lot of time in the pocket, and he still really couldn't move the ball throughout the course of that game. So that's concerning for me. And the second thing for me is the KC play calling. I do want to talk about it because it seemed like a very vanilla game plan for me last week. And we saw this week too against the Chargers, right? What's wrong with the Chiefs offense? Is it like, are they a flash in the pan and this and that? And then Andy Reid on Monday Night Football had one of the best play calling experiences you can have. Like, they were just shredding the Ravens in the first half, and Baltimore had no answer for them. I'm concerned a little bit about the Sammy Watkins injury, because then you get a little bit of the Demarcus Robinson experience, which isn't a good one in my experience. But you look at the Bills defense banged up at cornerback. Matt Milano missed the game against Tennessee as well. I think there's big potential for a bounce back here for Kansas City. I'm very much still a believer in this team and that they should be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. Whereas the Bills, they're a good team. I'm not sure they're at that level yet. So it's definitely Chiefs or nothing. I probably will play Kansas City. I'm just not in love with the 3.5, although I do see it rising as well.
Just before I go to Suma, Rob, I saw someone quoted a tweet on your Twitter account a couple of weeks ago about Josh Allen. And I'll be honest, it was one of the best comebacks I've ever seen to one. So basically, you'd been down on Josh Allen heading into this season. But look, you've only been on with us 1 week previously. You were very hot on them away at Las Vegas. And it's okay to change your mind, isn't it? As better. We're not all just, back to the wall in this.
Of course, your opinion should change as new data becomes available, right? You can't just be living in the past and double down on takes that are clearly not supported by data. So that's my whole thing. I don't think Josh Allen is elite. He's probably not the garbage quarterback that I thought he was going into the year. He's probably somewhere in between. I think that's what the data is telling us. But this is the new day and age, just not only in sports, in the world, right? It's one extreme or the other. You can't call a guy average. It's either he sucks or he's amazing. And that's just kind of the way society is evolved.
Absolutely. Yeah, 2020 taught us anything. It's adapt to the situation. Suma, what are you thinking of this one? Drew Small, but more confident. I can only see this number going one way, though. You're probably going to see more Chiefs money throughout the week. What do you think about this one? Even at 3.5, is it one to take no, Suma, or what are you thinking?
Also in agreement, Chiefs or nothing here. I think what Rob said about the Chiefs defense, I think Steve Spagnuolo is doing a fantastic job since he's arrived in Kansas City. They don't have the greatest personnel at their disposal. They don't have great linebackers. They don't have great cornerbacks, but somehow Spagnuolo is always finding ways to get into the mind of opposing quarterbacks. I like how he schemes up Tyrann Mathieu over the middle, playing the robber technique and covering the slot, etc. I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to have a big game against the defense, or that non-existing defense. And I think I gotta give Josh Allen some credit. I think if John Brown comes back, they should get a couple scoring drives against the Chiefs defense. But overall, I would definitely lean towards Patrick Mahomes versus the defense other than Josh Allen, who is playing at a very, very high level for 5 weeks so far. But I think in this one, it will be too much.
Anyone want to talk about this total before we move off it, guys? It's 58. Does it go up? Does it go down? It's a standalone primetime game. Drew, what way do you see this number going?
I don't think it's going to be bet down unless there's some funky weather in Buffalo on Monday night. And really, realistically, there's no game state that suggests the under is really in play here. The Buffalo Bills, if they have a lead, are they going to be able to manifest a run and really punish Kansas City's defense where they are soft? Not really. They are very one-dimensional offensively right now. They attack with, if they want to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to lean on their speed. They're going to have to play up tempo. And again, if they have a lead, we know what that means as far as the total in Kansas City being able to answer. They can score as quickly as anyone in the league. So I think this is, again, kind of, as square as it sounds, Kansas, favorite and the over are probably the right sides in this one on a Monday night. But they haven't given you an especially favorable price to bet. So not going to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if it was 54.5, 55, you could see that getting bet up pretty quickly. And then perhaps it. All right, guys, let's move off that one and let's move on to the Rams and the 49ers Sunday Night Football this week. Let's take a look at the betting. This game is on the board at Matchbook. Price is correct at the time of broadcast as ever. Current betting at Matchbook, you can back the Rams. They're on the road at 1.57. 49ers at 2.61. 49ers 3.5 on the point spread. That is getting bigger. Look ahead, there was 49ers -3 about a week ago. So there you go, full 6.5 point difference there. 51.5 is the total. Suma, start with you here first. The early bird catches the worm. You're on insights.matchbook.com. Already bet the over at 51. We're now up at 51.5. This is your best play for this one, Suma.
Yes, I'm all over the over here. I think this is a field goal too short. And I think we are getting a discount here because of some recency bias and some recent performances of both teams. The Niners offense didn't really look great the past couple of weeks. Nick Mullins, last week they rushed Jimmy Garoppolo after his high ankle sprain into the matchup, and Kyle Shanahan said that maybe it was a little bit too early and he wanted to protect Jimmy Garoppolo. He pulled him at halftime. So this is not really being the Niners offense we used to know. I think this week it's going to be a completely different game. Jimmy Garoppolo has another week to heal his ankle. He might get a couple full practices in. So I think the perception of the Niners offense is a little bit down right now. And on the other hand, the Rams are playing fantastic on offense, but their defense is getting way too much credit after playing the full NFC East. Washington football team. Cowboys haven't been that great offensively. Yep. They were just catching up to some bad game scripts. The Eagles' offense has been very bad. And the Giants' offense, Jason Garrett and Daniel Jones. So the Rams' defense, I think their pass defense is producing some top 10 efficiency numbers, but that's not really where I would slot them. Going to the season, I thought this is going to be a bottom third defense. From a personal standpoint, aside of Aaron Donald, they cannot generate any pass rush whatsoever. They don't have any manpower to cover those receivers outside of Jalen Ramsey. And I think this is going to be a very big bounce back game for the 49ers offense. But on the other side, the 49ers defense, they are losing so many players. They are playing with their backup defensive line. Richard Sherman won't be back this week. Emmanuel Mosley is basically 50-50 after his concussion. I don't like their safety duo. Kevon Alexander, linebacker, is not playing after his concussion, in my opinion. So this is a very decimated Niners defense playing against a very good Rams offense. Sean McVay has done a tremendous job, in my opinion. They have the highest play action rate in the league, I think, at 48%. They're using tons of motion. The offensive line is playing much better than last year. Jared Goff has, I think, the fourth or third highest passing rate from Pro Football Focus this year. I think this is going to be an offensive battle. I wouldn't be surprised if we see this score in the upper 50s, maybe low 60s. And I'm happy to grab that over here. I thought the total would be 53, 53.5, maybe 54 without Richard Sherman. And yeah, I took, I think, 50.5. And I think now it's 51, 51.5. And this would still be a overplay for me.
Yeah, opened 49.5. You tipped it up on Insights at flat 51, so 51.5. So look, if you think it's a 54, it's still probably valued there 51.5. Yeah. Drew, just outside of the total, I want to talk about the side for a second. I kind of touched on it. Look ahead, and I don't want to get too bogged down in look aheads when they're kind of week to week. They can change in an instant. But if it's a 6.5 point turn, I can't get my head around the fact that the Rams have had 3 East Coast trips in the first 5 weeks of an NFL season for a West Coast team. I could be totally wrong. I haven't seen that before. Someone can correct me on that by all means. But that's surely got to be a factor here. And yes, I know they're only going to San Fran here, but that's got to catch up on a team sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, that I would 100% agree with you. I don't think home field advantage really is worth much of anything on average in the NFL anymore. Maybe 1% or 2%, just on the basis of, comfort with your own stadium and your own setting and understanding your field and the particularities of it. But when you have this type of a travel situation, that situational edge, I think, is real. And I do think that this being the 4th week of travel in 5 weeks for the Rams is going to be, it's going to manifest some sort of fatigue for a Rams team that's thin anyway. They lost a couple of important, depth pieces on defense, especially in that game against Washington, probably went unnoticed. Some younger players that aren't named players, but the the Rams can't really afford to lose anyone. This is a stars and scrubs defense as it is. And, you start bringing in replacement level players and, you're going up against Kyle Shanahan, who still has George Kittle. He still has Raheem Mostert. Jimmy Garoppolo is obviously not playing well, but there's enough offensive weapons with this team, with the 49ers, that they're going to be in this game. And the swing that you're seeing in terms of the side is one of the bigger swings that I can remember seeing in a week. The fact that we were expecting this to be Niners -3 and it's Niners +3.5. Those aren't 6.5 meaningless points. You not only went across, but
you get through a lot of key numbers there. Yeah.
Normally this would be what, a 20%. So I guess teasing across zero is foreboding. But if, that 6-point tease is a 20% implied probability, right? Like this is a big swing in 1 week when you don't, when you're not really replacing any key players for the Niners. But they've had enough cluster injuries on defense. They've had cluster injuries everywhere. But I think they have enough in terms of offensive firepower here to keep this a battle. And Kyle Shanahan has generally had a really nice offensive game plan going up against the Rams throughout his tenure with the San Francisco 49ers. They generally show up and play this game well. And realistically, the Rams are about as overrated as they will ever be throughout this season, because through 5 weeks they've played the Buffalo Bills and the NFC East, and the NFC East is proving to be one of the most, more poor, divisions that I can remember really seeing in football. What you're getting from Daniel Jones, the Washington quarterbacks, Carson Wentz to this point in the season is just absolutely, it's absolutely pathetic.
No, we've got the Ginger Ninja as well, which is great. That just kind of really elevates.
We'll get to him. But yeah, no, that like. They have padded their resume with wins against teams that they should have beaten handily, and they did. So it's tough to really look at them and say that they are, this true powerhouse. Even though if you look at all the EPA stats and unadjusted for opponent, they look like a clear Super Bowl contender. I think that regression starts this week as they go up against the Niners, who the team that plays them especially well. So I'll take 3.5 here happily. I think this is a very, very decent buy low spot on the Niners and sell high on the Rams. So, just the fact that you're getting such a huge, you're catching such a huge adjustment. It's going to be tough to support from a math standpoint that you should back the Rams at -3.5. I can't imagine that this doesn't come back to 3 by kickoff.
Rob, Drew touched on a lot of it there, but there's a major case of recency bias here with the 49ers getting 3.5 through that key number. What are you thinking with this one? Is the market over adjusted in your opinion?
I think it has. I'm not in a rush to run and bet San Francisco because of that, because the defense is a mess, frankly. I'd like to. I think there has been a little bit of an overcorrection here, largely because of what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. But overall, there's just so many holes on that defense. And I don't necessarily think that I trust Jared Goff to exploit it as much as I did Ryan Fitzpatrick last week. I joined Suma on the over last week. I'm on the over again here. But Jared Goff, you look at his air yards this year, it's third lowest in the league. He's really not airing it out downfield. And I think that's really an opportunity you have to expose this 49ers defense right now that are missing 4 cornerbacks. But even with that, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp going up against the secondary, I still think they're going to be able to move the ball. Where I do expect positive regression, though, definitely is the 49ers offense. I don't know how much of Jimmy G's performance last week was related to his injury, but I would imagine that having another week to rest is going to help in some capacity. And you look at the Rams, they have one of the weakest linebacking cores in the entire league right now. The 49ers just so happen to have George Kittle. They run a lot of their offense east to west as well, where the Rams just don't have that speed and linebacker and the tackling at linebacker to be able to defend this offense. So I do agree with Suma. I think there's going to be a lot of points. If I had to pick the side, I would pick the 49ers. There's no way I'm laying 3.5 with the Rams right now for all the reasons that Drew mentioned, but I much prefer the total in this game.
Okay, no, that's good. There's a good consensus there on the total, and if there's a side there to be played, you're grabbing the 3.5 points there. All right, gentlemen, let's move on to the Packers against the Bucs. A pretty interesting one here, and again, a bit of a change in the look-ahead line here as well. Let's bring up some prices there at Matchbook. At time recording, and back the Packers at 1.8 at Matchbook, the Bucs at 2.2. Bucs getting a 2.5 point start on the main point spread there, just under 1.95, and the total is 54. Rob, I'll stick with you here for a second. We discussed the Packers on week one preview. And look, I think it's 13-3 last year. People were saying that they've got to regress here in some way, but they look a lot better than last year. And I know we don't want to get carried away. They've had the bye last week. They've only played 4 games, but it is hard, very hard, not to be impressed by what they're doing with, again, minus a few key players as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've come around on the Packers relative to what my preseason expectations were of this team as well, and I think you kind of be dumb not to, based on what you've seen out of Aaron Rodgers so far this season, where he's clearly something has happened to his game where he's not the quarterback that has been merely average for the last couple of years. But I look at this game and I think the Bucs are probably a bit undervalued here due to the fact that they haven't had a healthy Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on the field together for an entire game yet this season. And I'm really monitoring the status of both those guys because the Packers do have Jair Alexander, and he's a really good corner, and he held Calvin Ridley to no catches earlier this year as well. So I would ideally want both these receivers in the game. But if they are, I think that really opens things up for Tom Brady. And we really haven't seen that offense opened up to the point that it can be. And with those receivers on the field, I do like the Bucs offense quite a bit. Without them, I think this is just Tom Brady with the New England offense from a season ago. And we all know how that ended up when he doesn't have any weapons. So admittedly, the thought of going against Aaron Rodgers is scary right now. You also have to consider the numbers he's put up have largely been without Devontae Adams as well. And he's still first in EPA per dropback by a pretty wide margin in the NFL right now. The loss of Vita Vea is going to be felt for the Bucs defense, both in the run game and the pass game. Arguably the best interior lineman in the league, not named Aaron Donald right now. I would have loved to see him go up against Corey Linsley, who's a very good center for the Packers as well. I think that would have kind of mitigated a bit of that advantage. But I make this game much closer to a pick'em than the line is right now. So I do see value in the Bucs. And honestly, just talking about game flows, I do think each offense has a significant advantage over the defense if we do get Godwin Evans in the lineup for the Bucs. I know 54 in the past, we would have looked at this as quite a high total in the NFL. I'm not sure it's high enough. I really don't. I think like both these teams can score into the 30s with relative ease. Either of these teams is down. You trust the quarterback on the other side to really move the ball quickly, which is important as well when you're chasing a total that's in the 54 range. So I guess I equally like the over and the Bucs in this game. And I typically don't get involved in side and total in the same game a whole lot.
Yeah.
But this might end up being one this week where I am.
Okay. The Bucs and the over there. Summer, what are you thinking of this one? I can see the Packers, like they're averaging 38 points through 4 games. I can see them becoming very much a public team all of a sudden very quickly. Does this number get to 3? It probably doesn't get past 3, but what are you thinking right now? 2.5, where's the value?
Definitely with the home team, with the Buccaneers. I think this is going to go to Pick'em as soon as Chris Godwin gets ruled in. I would anticipate he's going to get like 2 limited practices, maybe a full practice on Friday. I think his hamstring injury is now 3 weeks away, so that's probably the target time to get back on the field. I think he's going to play. Mike Evans had a mild ankle sprain. He wasn't 100% last time. I think Scotty Miller was banged up as well. So this might really be, like Rob said, the first time this year that Tom Brady is going to play with his first 3 receivers healthy. And I think Tom Brady has been playing really well this year. He's graded like the, I think, 5th or 4th best quarterback by Pro Football Focus. I think Bruce Arians.
What about last Thursday night, though, Simo? Like, I mean, there's got to be a few question marks. I know they're playing in Chicago. He made that bloody mess of the 4th down call towards the end as well. But would that not kind of concern you in any way?
Not really. I think they were moving the ball very good on their first 3 drives. You could really see Mike Evans not being 100%. Rob Gronkowski is getting slower each week, I think, by just watching the games. Scotty Miller, I think he had no targets, so that's also pretty telling. And in the second half, the pass rush of the Bears came alive. Khalil Mack was getting some one-on-one wins against Tristan Wirfs. and Tom Brady just tried to air it out, and it didn't really work out. But I think this week they are facing a much worse defense. I think the Packers defense is completely overrated. They are like in the bottom third of the league. And outside of Jair Alexander and a couple of solid pass rushers, there's not really anything. I think Tom Brady is going to have a big game, but on the other side, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to shred the defense as well. So I also like the over here, and I think my numbers pick him for that game with Chris Godwin. And I think as soon as Chris Godwin gets ruled into the game, I think that's going to move.
Drew, I know from listening to the Deep Dive podcast, you're a lot hotter on that Bears secondary than a lot of people. So maybe Suma did kind of touch on it there. Tom Brady had a tough time, but he may have a way better time against this Packers defense.
Yeah, no, he absolutely ought to. And realistically, Chris Godwin obviously is an amazing player, but they have wave after wave of receivers on this Tampa Bay team. So even if he's not 100%, even if Evans all of a sudden is a no-go or has to come out of the game, they still have enough weapons that I think that their passing game should be fine. And realistically, Tampa takes a lead. Are they going to be able to put it away? Probably not. The Packers defense is soft against the run, but it's not like the Bucs have really shown us any ability to manifest a running attack in the crunch time of games to put away a lead. So I do think that opens up an over here. And, the new average total in the NFL is 51. And this is 54. Yeah. So this is a little higher, but you have two absolutely, absolutely perfect matchups with the quarterbacks and the passing attack against secondaries that are susceptible to being preyed on deep. We saw Justin Herbert and the Chargers prey on the Buccaneers pass defense, which is they can defend well in the middle, the short to medium range, but they are susceptible if you take them over the top. And if Devontae Adams is a go, if Lazard is a go, if Aaron Rodgers is seeing separation down the field, he's been absolutely making defenses pay with that pass all season long. I don't see that changing, especially since the Bucs aren't going to be able to manifest much of a pass rush. Vita Vea was kind of the key to them getting any inside pressure or any pass rush at all. He'll be gone for the rest of the season. So Rodgers should have plenty of time to sit back in the pocket and pick apart the secondary. I think, Todd Bowles has done a nice job defensively over the course of the season, but the skill and the talent just isn't there. And if you dare Aaron Rodgers to beat you deep, he'll do it. And I think that's probably how you see this game play out in terms of sort of score and answer, because, and Rob brought up a great point, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, these might be the two best quarterbacks we've ever seen in our lives answer with the touchdown. Like whenever anyone scores against them, they have an answer, and it's the rate that they can answer a touchdown in game is just absurd, which is exactly what you want if you're playing an over, even it's in the range of 54. So I would expect this ticks up into the 56 ballpark. That's what I make this total. And as far as the side goes, I understand the line move flipping from, Bucs small fave to Packers small fave. You have the Packers coming off a bye, but Bucs have 10 days rest. They were actually probably got more practices in than the Packers did because of the rules and the way buys work nowadays. But it still is, kind of neutralizes the Packers bye to a degree. But Packers likely getting back Devontae Adams, I think, does make a somewhat of a difference. And this is going to be one of the more important games you see that matters over the course of the season in terms of kind of flushing out the NFC playoff picture. So I'm pretty excited for this one, and I don't think I can take a side. I think the number is probably fair. This is sort of whoever has the ball last, whoever could execute on weird small things at the end of the game, special teams, things like that, and that's kind of a coin flip in my opinion.
Bombs away and over 54. Just before I come off this, Rob, I just want to ask you a question on betting on the side in this one. And I've asked Drew this a few times, so I just want to get your opinion on it. 2.5 now, and anything under 3 is obviously a key number. You come back on the money line, the Bucs at plus 120, plus money right now. What's your general strategy there once you get under that 3? Are you just more likely to take the plus money on the money line?
I am. So the 1 and 2 are worth more than they used to be, right? Because of the missed PATs that are happening in the NFL. So it's not what it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. But I do prefer to playing the money line on these underdogs that are 2.5 or less. I think it's slightly more plus EV to do that. as of right now. That could change by end of the year, depending on how the scores play out. But as of now, that's my preference.
Yeah, and a hell of a lot more teams going for 2 and stuff as well with the analytics thing. Right, let's move on, gentlemen, to the Cleveland Browns. They head into the Pittsburgh. Haven't won here in a while, guys. Haven't won here in a while, but there's a bit of momentum to Cleveland right now. A lot of momentum. Changing up at the moment, guys. Going to go US odds for a change for our US audience. Plus 175 Cleveland Browns, minus 193 Pittsburgh Steelers. Browns plus 3.5, minus 104. And 51 is the total. Drew, I know from watching you and Andy on Sunday nights. By the way, I love those opening line periscopes. They're absolutely great. I love falling asleep to yours and Andy's voices, bitching about totals and whatnot. You guys obviously really wanted a mid-40s total here. It's settled on 51 at even money right now. Is that a play still at 51? Some key numbers again in the 50s.
I mean, now you're at basically NFL average.
Yeah.
And honestly, it comes down to, whether or not that total gets made comes down to, what happens with Mayfield and how he's, what is his health status? What is his performance level in this game? And yeah, I mean, the Steelers total last week at 44.5. I just
good show. Great show.
I knew that was a gift, and I am mad that I just didn't have. I was like, why bet anything else on the board when you have that big good of a gift in the NFL? And but either way, the Steelers defense has regressed this season. This was not unexpected. A lot of their defensive performance last year was, kind of specific, situational, and schedule related. And I think that in general, if they have a difficulty getting after it from a pass rush standpoint, then the Browns are going to be able to at least operate their offense. And now a lot of what the Browns have gotten to this point in the season, in my opinion, is still a little suspect because of who they've played and how they've done it. And they can obviously manifest a spectacular rushing attack. They have had 1 and now 2, and they can make a good running back out of anyone. So I don't really even think we need to focus and kind of shine a light on the running back. But just their run scheme in general has been very, very strong. And Kevin Stefanski is coaching his ass off so far this season. He is doing a brilliant job of kind of making the most of what he has in terms of pieces. And it's cool to see the Browns be competitive. Now, can the Browns defense do anything to stop the Steelers attack is a much tougher question because, with the week off, Roethlisberger and company, and realistically, I thought they were limited even a little bit by the way that game was officiated. They could have scored even more against that Eagles team. They were picking apart a couple of key weaknesses. They're doing a good job of sort of coordinating to the, specifically, they have enough diversity across their offense that they can, kind of key in on what the opposing defense is especially weak, which I think is a problem for the Browns, who are going to be without Greedy Williams. We've seen this secondary be able to be picked on all season. And realistically, the Steelers with their, with all the weapons they have in the passing game, I think are going to be able to put a ton of pressure here on the Browns. And, this doesn't set up well for the Browns in the same way that it did against the Cowboys, where they could play with the lead, against the Colts, where they could play with the lead. And, just sort of the overall nature of this divisional rivalry, which has been kind of big brother, little brother for so many years. You may see the Browns come in and be playing a little emotional just because they think, this is, we're for real now. This is our chance. And, I don't like a quarterback like Baker Mayfield playing that way, to be honest. And I still have huge reservations about the numbers we're seeing him produce and whether there's going to be a big regression at some point here, because there's a lot of decisions he makes that is just like, man, I don't know about this guy. I don't know that he's the guy. And it's games like this, which are relatively close, they're expected to compete. We've seen this line move in from 4.5 to 3.5. I don't know that I'm ready to get in bed with the Baker Mayfield in this spot. I like over 51 a little more than Steelers minus 3.5. But once we get a little bit more information on Browns injuries, especially all universe guard Wyatt Teller, best guard in the NFL, apparently. His presence or absence might be pretty important in this one. So if we start to get bad news, injury news for the Browns, I'll probably be taking Steelers -3 in this one.
He went out in game last week though, didn't he? And I think they kind of adjusted pretty well. But like Suma, you look at the Browns, they're averaging 30 points a game on offense, but they're also giving up 29 a game on defense. That kind of screams a team with the over. But like, I always look at a team like that, and you're thinking if they come up against a good team, which Pittsburgh are right now, they may just fall flat in their face. But what are you thinking on this one?
You might have recognized that I like to use the PFF passing grade for quarterbacks because it gives me kind of a clue how the process is working for each quarterback, because those grades just mirror the process of throwing and not the result, completely independent of the result. And Baker Mayfield actually has a worse passing grade than he had last year, but the offense is just clicking all around because the supporting cast is better, the offensive line is upgraded, and Kevin Stefanski is doing one heck of a job. Yeah. And I think I'm not rushing to bet the Steelers at -3.5, but it's Steelers or nothing for me. I think subjectively the Browns are going to have an off game this week. Baker Mayfield has always been allergic to pressure. No Wyatt Teller, best defensive line in the game with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's going to make more mistakes than he did all season. And on the other side, I don't really know how the Browns are going to stop the Steelers offensively, defensively. They have so many wide receivers who can actually play very good football right now. I think Deontay Johnson might be back healthy. Chase Claypool is emerging. Eric Ebron. I don't really see how the Browns are going to stop them. So at the current number, I don't love Pittsburgh, but it would be Pittsburgh or nothing.
Rob, Pittsburgh or nothing for Suma. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I personally think this one's a tough game because honestly, these are two teams that I would have liked to fade going forwards, or at least over the course of the next couple of weeks, and they just happen to be playing each other. I mean, you look at the Steelers this year, they've beaten the Giants, the Broncos, the Texans, and the Eagles, right? Those are teams with a record of 3-15-1 combined. And despite that easy schedule, you look at the Pittsburgh offense this year, they're actually only 23rd in offensive success rates this season. I wasn't particularly impressed with them against the Eagles. Philly 1 yards per play in that game. I know yards per play is kind of a bit of an outdated stat, but I still like to check it every now and then. So originally I was kind of leaning towards Cleveland, but I have so many concerns about this matchup for the Browns, right? For starters, the strength of their defense, Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon on the outside, that is very much mitigated by the fact that Big Ben gets the ball out very quickly. And that's been the key to success for them this year. He's not throwing downfield a whole lot. His average depth of target is very short relative to past years as well. It's very much a dink and dunk offense, but they have so many playmakers that it works for them, right? These guys are great in the open field. We saw it this past weekend as well. So I think that really mitigates the pressure that Cleveland can get up front on defense. And then I think you have to be concerned with the other side of the ball here for sure. That defensive line, it's great, just like Suma said. I mean, you have Cameron Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, TJ Watt going up against a less than 100% offensive line. And to me, the tendency for Baker Mayfield this year, where you look at where his misses have been, they've largely been overthrows. And this is a very opportunistic secondary. You look at last year, this team had 38 takeaways on defense. Like, it's an absurd number. It's more than 2 takeaways per game. You think back to previous years where like the Bears were an elite defense or the Jags, and they didn't come really close to 38 takeaways on defense. So I could definitely see Mayfield turning the ball over a lot in this. I've kind of done a 180 on this game. I originally went in thinking the Browns tempt me. Now I'm more so the Steelers tempt me, and that I probably just end up settling on, you know what, this would be a wash. I'm just going to pass on this game.
Yeah, it seems that kind of way, guys. I think yeah, if you to put me in the spot, I'd lay him with Pittsburgh right now, but it might be just one to avoid. Yeah, okay, guys, let's move on. Any other bets? You know, we generally cover 4 games here in the Matchbook Betting Podcast because we only have so much time, and we cover a few others. But there was one game in particular, Dallas at home to Arizona, was obviously going to be a big talking one. Unfortunately, Dak is gone. And Drew, there's been a big swing, and you know, we always kind of sit down and say, okay, how much is player X worth to a certain team? there may be a possibility, and we're looking right now, Dallas plus 2.5, and were they laying 3.5, 4.5 with Dak look ahead? So what are you thinking with this one? Has it gone too far? Because let's be honest, but I followed you with the Cardinals last week against my beloved Jets. It was a no-brainer, but they're the Jets. Yeah, you'd lay anyone on the road right now, but are Arizona really good enough to be a road favorite here?
I don't think so, and especially with the injuries. It's insane to say this because Dak is clearly one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league.
Yep.
But his absence is probably not the most important absence for the Cowboys from an injury standpoint, which is crazy to say. But it's because the delta between him and Andy Dalton and what they can do in the system is not as big as, say, the loss of, Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins for the season. It's over the course of the season and how the Cowboys forget about this game, because this game, Cardinals, in my opinion, are absolute frauds and should not be favorites in this spot. And realistically, without Chandler Jones, without an ability to rush the passer and take advantage of the one kind of key weakness with the Cowboys offense right now, they're going to be put in a position where they're going to have to score a lot in this game to keep up. And I don't see them being able to do that with the way their offense is still a little dysfunctional. But over the course of the season and the impact of this Dak Prescott injury, I think if the Cowboys fail to do anything, if they don't make the playoffs, if they don't win the NFC East, the super weak NFC East, if they can't win it, it's going to be because of the offensive line injuries, in my opinion, not because the Dak Prescott to Andy Dalton switch. And it stinks for Dak because he's worth getting paid, but you're probably going to see a ton of primetime games against weak opponents like the Washington football team on Thanksgiving, or this Cardinals game on Monday Night Football, where people are going to look and be like, oh man, Dalton looks good in this offense, and it's because they have three of the best wide receivers in football, and they have a scheme that is good and aggressive at times, and defenses are going to have to still be somewhat respectful of the Tony Pollard, Zeke Elliott backfield. So, if they're calling the correct aggressive play calling that I know lives inside Kellen Moore, deep inside, that we haven't always seen this season, but it's there, then this offense should still click, should still score points, and people are going to be like, man, Dalton's pretty good. Maybe Dak wasn't that valuable, and it's absolutely stinks for him. So, the injury itself, losing a top 10 quarterback in the league, it stinks. And it made me sad and angry, even though I don't really have any Cowboys affinity at all or any positions on them this season. I was still upset seeing it play out that way. But, for sure, thinking that there's some 6-point swing here because you're going from Dak Prescott to Andy Dalton is literally indefensible, in my opinion. I took +3 on the open because I was, I thought for sure this comes back to a pick 'em. I would take money line still at, anywhere in the ballpark of +120. 2.2 I think is a fair price for money line for the Cowboys, because I realistically, I think they should be small favorites in this game. And I think they get the win on Monday.
Yeah, 2.26 currently on Matchbook. I'll get to Cowboys fan Rob Pizzolla in a second. But Suma, just following your Slack channel this morning, you were making the comparison that, and this is probably going to shock a few people, but there isn't a major difference between Kyler Murray and the Ginger Ninja himself, Andy Dalton.
I think Kyler Murray adds another component in the run game on designed runs, but just looking at the passing game on dropbacks, statistically speaking, there's no difference between the two guys. They are exactly the same over the course of their careers. So I don't really think that going to that game, you can really make the case that Kyler Murray is a significantly better quarterback than Andy Dalton. And I think those teams are very, very equally built. Bad defense, questionable offensive line, solid weapons, and solid play callers. And I think we can break the game down to Andy Dalton plus CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup against Kyler Murray, Nuke Hopkins, Christian Kirk, and Larry Fitzgerald. And I think in this case, I would still give the edge to the Dallas Cowboys. Michael Gallup is a wide receiver 1 playing wide receiver 3 on the Cowboys. So this is ridiculous, and I gotta give the edge to Dallas here. Yeah, absolutely.
So many weapons. Rob, I know you don't really want to talk about Dallas, and it's kind of a painful one on Sunday night, but this does strike me as a pick 'em, and I think if you're getting good plus money here, it's surely one to be taking Dallas on.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything that everyone just said. Like, obviously, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I try to remain as impartial as I can when breaking down games. People that know me know that I have no problem betting against the Cowboys last week with the Giants.
Yeah.
But I will bet on them when I think that there's value there, and I think the Cowboys should be favored. Dalton is the best backup in the league that's not named Jameis Winston. And I know this is 2020, but if you go back to those seasons in Cincinnati where he was successful, that 2012 to 2015 run where they won 10 games in every single one of those years, he was surrounded by
every year.
There was weapons there. AJ Green, Marvin Jones. They had a young and actually good Mohamed Sanu as a third receiving option. Tyler Eifert had just come into the league. Gio Bernard out of the backfield. And I think you look at the Cowboys offense and the makeup of it now, it's very similar to that makeup when he was successful. And over the years, that talent started to decline, right? AJ Green started to get older. You looked at the second receivers that they brought in with, John Ross and Brandon LaFell for when he was running like an 8-second 40 at the end of his career, and Alex Erickson. Like, this was not a good offense towards the end of his career in Cincinnati in terms of the weapons that were there. And I think again, he's old. He's on the tail end of his career, but I think he can move the ball in this Arizona defense. And people look at this Cardinals team, and I think they somehow believe that this Cardinals team has a good defense, but they don't. They're below average in EPA per play. They're below average in DVOA. They lose Chandler Jones, like Drew mentioned as well, which is, you want to expose the Cowboys. It's a weak offensive line. Chandler Jones is a perfect guy to do that, and now all of a sudden he's out of the lineup there. So I don't necessarily think they're built to capitalize on the Cowboys' offensive weakness. To me, this is very much a game where, I just do not agree with the price whatsoever. I don't think Dallas is going to their defense is all of a sudden going to turn it on and be able to completely limit Arizona. I'm not saying that, but we look at prices and we determine value off that for games.
Yep.
And this price doesn't make any sense to me. I think Dallas should be closer to -1, -1.5 here.
Drew, jump back in.
Yeah. Speaking of betting against the Cowboys, and maybe file this away as, best laid plans. But if this goes the way we're laying this out and, the Cowboys take care of business on Monday night. And, oh, by the way, the Washington football team has taken a ton of money this week. They're now under 3 against the New York Giants with the breaking news that Kyle Allen is going to start. If the Washington football team underwhelms and the Cowboys take care of business and they open that game next week at something like Cowboys -6 or something like that, then we can rehab this conversation and talk about okay, well, now we have a team that can take advantage of key weakness with the Cowboys. And Andy Dalton, all these weapons be damned, he's going to have half a second to get a pass off, and you're going to get lots of runs Zeke Elliott into the teeth, the only thing that the Washington football team can do well. So maybe only one quick week here to take advantage of this.
Absolutely. Literally maybe just that 1 week that the market has just overreacted, and it may adjust back accordingly. Right, guys, any other bets? Drew, you're normally a good guy to go around. We've got a lot. We'll do a recap in a second, but we've got a lot for this week as in comparison to last week. It was a terrible last week. But anything else, one or two jumping out at you, Drew?
Yeah, two real quick ones. I laid the points with the Ravens this week. I know the Ravens have not impressed overall this season, even at their great record and their big point differential. We haven't seen them click. They're going up against Philadelphia Eagles, who have been absolutely exposed in the seam. And if there's one thing that Lamar Jackson can do well from a passing standpoint and has done well consistently through the last 2 years, it is really attack that seam. And I think that they can get it done relatively easily against this Eagles defense, which is suspect. I know it's drifted up to 7.5, 8, but I think that line should be closer to 10. So I laid the points with the Ravens. And as we talked about, the Chicago Bears pass defense, I think, is legit. And they're going up against the Panthers, who are now favorites in this spot. The Panthers have done a lot of amazing things in the absence of Christian McCaffrey on the basis of, really attacking through the air and hitting the two passing weapons they have, and Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. This will be by far and away the stiffest test they face in terms of passing defense. With the way that the Bears secondary is playing is pretty spectacular right now. So I like an under in that one, even though it's a relatively low total, 44.5. I think that thing comes in. I think that moves down across 44, to be honest. It's 45 at some places, 44.5 at other places. I think that closes in the 43 range.
Well-coached team, the Panthers, though. Very well-coached team. Rob, anything else jumping out of you? Are you going to keep us on tender hooks for best bet?
No, it's fine. I mean, here's one. Nobody's talked about this game this week, so I'll just throw it out there. I like the Lions against the Jags. I prefer 3 than -3.5. But I don't know when people started talking themselves into the Jags being like this team that they've lost by 42 combined points in the last 3 weeks to the Texans, the Bengals, and the Dolphins. And honestly, the Bengals score was very flattering for them because there were some touchdowns taken off the board from Cincinnati in that game as well. So the Jags, this is a team that we went into the year this could be a historically bad team, 0-16 potential. Yeah. They win in week 1 against the Colts, and all of a sudden everyone's like,
"That's what happened. That was the worst thing. That was the worst thing to happen to them." Yeah,
I get it. The Lions, Matt Patricia, I'm not a fan, but the offense has been above average since Kenny Golladay came back. They're, I think, 14th in EPA per play with Golladay in the lineup. They're going to move the ball on the Jags, and I know the Lions defense has issues, but I'm not convinced that the Jags offense is just going to keep up. They faced bad defenses in the Bengals and the Texans the last couple of weeks, and they weren't able to keep up there. So I think it's a short price with Detroit.
What's the bloody buzz with Gardner Minshew? Is he just like a really poor man's Baker Mayfield or something? I do not, or is it just because he had a mustache? But I just think he's one of the most. I know we can't say he's overrated because he's not really that rated, but man alive, he just gets a lot of buzz for someone who is just average.
He can sling it at times. I mean, if Chark is back for the Jags, which seems likely this week, he'll have a little bit more success, and I think he's largely a product of his weapons as well there. But he does some good things sometimes. He really does. You'll watch him, and you'll see him go through an entire drive, and you're like, man, this guy shows flashes. Yeah. You'll just see him look like deer in the headlights on the next drive, and you're like, what happened here? And I think that's just what happens when you're like a below-average quarterback in the NFL. It's you're capable at times, but it's not going to be consistent. And I think that's what the issue.
I think my frustration, Rob, is born out of back in the Jaguars a few times, and I've got more of the latter end of that, the average drive. Suma, anything else? Or are you going to keep us waiting for best bet, mate? Anything else jumping out?
No, just a quick take on the Ravens. I don't think it's going to matter this week, but just by watching their games and looking at some efficiency numbers, Lamar Jackson, the passing game is not really good this season. I think without Darius Slay and with guys like Nathan Gary, you won't have much of an issue against that Eagles defense. But going forward, I think they might really be overrated by the market because that passing game doesn't really look good on tape. I think they are lacking a clear-cut wide receiver one. I don't think Marquise Brown is able to fill that role just yet, and they don't have any other options besides him. And I think the Ravens, if they blow out the Eagles, there might be some decent value in the upcoming weeks on them against them.
And just to add to that, Suma, as well, I mean, Lamar Jackson didn't practice 2 days last week, right? And then all of a sudden Friday comes in, he practices. But you look at the breakdown of run to pass last week against Cincinnati. There's 37 pass attempts by Lamar Jackson and 2 rush attempts, right? Which is very uncharacteristic for the offense as well. I couldn't bet the Eagles this week. Don't get me wrong, guys. There's no chance you could get me to bet on the Eagles with the injuries they have. But I think there's a realistic possibility that Lamar Jackson is hurt or there's something going on there that's going to hamper this offense going forwards because it does force them to pass more. And he doesn't become that dual threat, which makes him such an efficient offense. So I do agree with some of Suma's points there.
They also have a bye coming up, and then they go to schedule hell. Realistically, if you have any affinity for the Ravens over the course of this season, or you think they can compete in the playoffs, you really should wait until December. And you know that somebody else has to present value in this. So maybe it's the Chiefs, maybe it's the Steelers, maybe it's the Titans. I don't know, but Steelers Titans next week, and then Steelers Ravens the following week. That's going to really kind of give you a very, very decent picture of what the AFC playoff picture looks like. And I agree with you guys. There's definitely something not quite right with the Ravens, but the way that Chase Claypool, the way that Tyler Higbee destroyed this Eagles defense, I think sets up well for what Lamar can do well in the passing game.
Yeah, it seems to be a good spot there for them. All right, guys, before we get to the home straight, top dogs and best bets, let's just do a quick recap of what we had. So we're going to lay 3.5 with the Chiefs. I think we're definitely going to take Rams over 51.5 it is at the moment. I think we may just pass on the 49ers plus 3.5. Just leave that one alone. But if we had to bet it, that would be the one. Bucs over 54, Bucs money line, and I'm going to throw in the Cowboys money line there as well, guys, at 2.26 currently. I think that offers a great deal of value. And I'm going to take one more from your any other bets, and Rob, I'm going to go with your Lions -3.5. I'm going to show my anti-Gardner Minshew bias there for sure. Okay, guys, let's move on to top dogs. 2 out of 3 again last week. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. It's 2 out of 3 the last 4 weeks, by the way, guys. So we're almost there. What do we have? We had the Panthers. Great shout, Suma. Love that one. And you selected it as well Sunday afternoon. Got involved in that one. What else do we have? Adam had the Browns. They obviously went off as favorites, but they were an underdog. And we won't even talk about the Jags anymore, Drew. But Drew, all right, do you know what? Suma, kick us off. You're in the clubhouse of this, mate. What's the top dog for you this week, Moneyline dog?
I don't know whether I'm going to end up betting it, but I would take the Buccaneers in this one. I think you said plus 120.
Yes.
Yeah, I would take the Bucs in that case.
Okay, and we've obviously played the Bucs in the money line as well. Rob Pizzolla, what are you thinking here? Who's going to cause a shock this week?
I like the Bears. I think it's a good sell high opportunity on Carolina, who's been very good to me overall, but I think they're a little bit overvalued in the market right now. This is an offense that has scored 23 points or less in 3 of their games this year, which, I mean, sounds okay, but the average points per game in the NFL this year is closer to 26. So they're not really moving it as consistently and punching it in for points as people would expect. Most concerning for them, you got to keep an eye on the defensive line injuries for Carolina this week, because if honestly they can't rush Foles, I think Foles can have success against this defense because it's not really a very talented defense altogether. So I do like the Bears this week.
Drew, moneyline dog?
Toss up for me between the Niners and the Cowboys. I guess I'll go with the Cowboys.
Yeah.
They have a little bit better chance of getting the win. I think they should be favored, whereas I think the Niners should just be more like a pick 'em. So we'll go Cowboys. Can get that at 2.2-ish?
2.2 currently, yeah. So I think this treble is a bit shorter at the time of recording and back at 8.5. But you know what? You give me an 8.5 shot on a Sunday night, gentlemen. Carrying into Monday with the Dallas game, I would gladly take that. I think we're almost there, guys. We're almost there. We're 2 out of 3.
It's a weird week. Almost all the dogs are short.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there's the Eagles and the Bengals are the only 2 outside a touchdown right now.
And the Jets against the Dolphins.
Jeez, I forgot about that. Yeah.
I've been looking this week, crossing fingers, hoping lines get to +3 before I'm just going to eventually settle on the money line. So that's been my week so far. Is just like checking my phone for alerts of +3s, and they just haven't come in.
There's only about 98 hours to go to kickoff, Rob. So we should hopefully get those numbers there. All right, gentlemen, let's go week 6 best bets, and we'll wrap it up from there. Suma, you nailed it last week. Kick us off, mate. Where are you going?
I will take the Niners Rams over. I think it's currently 51.5.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Good man. Rob is all the best bet.
I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys money line. I know it's my own team. People accuse me of bias, but I really do believe this is a great spot for them. And I just, in terms of what the price should be in the game, I think you're going to get the most value on Dallas money line this week.
Okay, Drew.
I'll take San Francisco +3.5. You're going to give me
that.
a game.
Threw it in there.
Ball last. It's going to be a close one there, and for a lot of the same reasons that Sumo's best bet is the San Francisco over. I mean, San Francisco is going to score in this game, and if there's any fatigue due to travel on the part of the Rams, then this should be a nice one.
All right, we've locked in 6 best bets, 6 bets, and 3 best bets, of course. That's it from us, guys. Absolute pleasure. Drew, thanks for joining me ever. Suma, Rob, great to have you back on board. That's it from us, as I said. This week's games, in comparison to last week, there's a lot of good looking games. Oh, really?
Monday is going to be really good.
Oh, we're going to be very excited to come back again next Thursday as ever, even if it's a shitty slate, as you said, Drew. Guys, we're up. There you go. We'll have a profitable week. It might be one to go on holidays again next week, Rob. You don't know. All right, guys, we're out of time. That's it from us. We'll chat to you again next week. Best of luck with your week 6 bets. Stay safe.